I spent years begging for his love, but the moment I stopped, he couldn't let me go. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that has nothing to do with sleep. It lives in your chest, somewhere beneath your ribs, in the hollow space where hope used to burn bright and warm. It doesn't announce itself. It creeps in slowly, like winter through cracked window glass, until one morning you wake up and realize the fire is gone, and you aren't even sure when it died. That was the morning I, Emma Calloway, finally stopped loving Damien Blackwood. I remember it clearly. A Tuesday. The kind of gray, unremarkable Tuesday that the world uses as filler between important days. I was standing in front of the bathroom mirror, toothbrush in hand, staring at my own reflection. I looked at the shadows under my eyes, shadows that had lived there for 2 years now. I looked at the way my shoulders curved inward, like I was perpetually bracing for a blow. I looked at the girl in that mirror and I thought, she is so tired. And just like that, something inside me went quiet. Not broken. Not shattered the way it had shattered 100 times before, each fracture sending me crawling back to him, desperate to be the one who finally fixed whatever was wrong between us. This was different. This was the silence after a storm has completely spent itself. The eerie, total stillness when there is simply nothing left. I spit out the toothpaste, rinsed, and set the toothbrush down. I'm done. No tears. No dramatic declaration to the empty apartment. Just 2 words, quiet as a confession, and the strange lightness that followed them. Let me tell you about Damien Blackwood, because you need to understand what I was walking away from. Not just the man but the myth of him. Because in the Blackwood pack, Damien wasn't just a man. He was the alpha's heir. He was power and legend, stitched together in the body of someone who stood 6'3" and moved through a room the way a storm moves through an open field, like the world was already rearranging itself to accommodate him. I had known him my whole life. Growing up in Crestfall, the small mountain town where our pack had lived for generations, Damien Blackwood was the son that everyone orbited. Including me. Especially me. I was Emma Calloway, middle-ranking pack family, unremarkable by pack standards, brown hair and green eyes, and a laugh my mother always said was too loud for a girl my size. I was not the kind of girl that alphas chose. I knew that. I had always known that. And yet, there is a cruelty specific to fate, which is this: it will give you the one thing you want most in the world, but it will give it to you wrong bent. Like a wish granted by something that misunderstood the terms, Damien Blackwood was my mate. I found out the night of my 19th birthday, at the pack's midsummer gathering. He walked past me near the bonfire, and the world simply stopped. That is the only way I can describe the mate bond activating, like every sound dropped away, like the air thickened to something golden, like my entire nervous system rewired itself in 3 seconds and pointed every nerve ending directly at him. I had heard the old wolves describe it. I had never believed it could feel like that. He felt it too. I know he did. I saw it in the way he went still, the way his head turned, the way his dark eyes found mine across the firelight with an expression that looked almost like pain. And then his jaw tightened. And he walked away. That was the beginning. In the 2 years that followed, Damien Blackwood gave me just enough to keep me from leaving. Not love, or at least, not love the way I understood it. Not the kind that was consistent and warm and safe. What he gave me were moments, brilliant, devastating moments that I would spend weeks replaying, trying to extract enough warmth from them to sustain myself until the next one. A hand at the small of my back during a pack gathering, his touch so deliberate it made my knees weak. A look across a crowded room that said "I see you" in a language that bypassed words entirely. Twice, only twice, a night where the walls he kept around himself crumbled long enough for me to catch a glimpse of the man beneath the alpha air. The one who was afraid of being ordinary. The one who had grown up under his father's crushing expectations and didn't know how to exist. without the weight of them. On those nights, I loved him so ferociously it frightened me. But then morning would come. And with it the distance. The coldness. The way he could look through me in front of others like I was furniture, like the night before had been a moment of weakness he was actively correcting. He never acknowledged me as his mate publicly. Never allowed me the standing that Bond should have given me within the pack. His father, the current alpha, a hard and political man, had already arranged an alliance marriage for Damien with the daughter of the Northridge pack. A strategic union. A power consolidation. And Damien, heir to everything, had never once told him no. I made excuses for him for 2 years. He's under pressure. He's afraid. He needs time. He loves me, he just doesn't know how to show it. If I'm patient enough, if I'm understanding enough, if I love him hard enough and long enough and selflessly enough, you know how that sentence ends. The way it always ends, for girls who confuse endurance with devotion. Nowhere. It ends nowhere. After that Tuesday morning, something in me shifted in ways that surprised even myself. I stopped waiting by my phone. I stopped engineering reasons to be in places where Damien might appear. I stopped holding my breath at pack gatherings, hoping he would cross the room to stand beside me. I stopped replaying our moments like precious film reels, extracting warmth from them to get me through cold stretches. I started sleeping. Fully, deeply, without the restless half-wakefulness of someone always half-listening for a message that might not come. I started noticing the world around me again. The way the mountain forest smelled after rain, pine and cold stone and something wild underneath. The way my friend Lyra laughed, completely unself-conscious, her head thrown back. The satisfaction of my work at the Pax Healing Center, where I had been training as a herbalist and medicine woman, a role I had been half present in for 2 years because so much of my energy had been funneled into Damien. I started becoming myself again, or perhaps, for the first time, a version of myself that had never had the chance to fully form. Having spent her most formative years bent around the shape of someone else's unavailability, it felt terrifying and clean, like stepping out of a house you didn't realize was suffocating you. The mate bond didn't disappear. I want to be honest about that, because the stories always make it sound cleaner than it is. The bond was still there, a low, persistent hum in my chest, like a radio signal that I had finally stopped pressing to my ear. I could still feel it. I simply stopped feeding it with my attention, stopped letting it steer me, stopped mistaking its biological pull for a reason to continue destroying myself. That distinction, I would learn, mattered enormously. It was Lyra who noticed first. We were sitting on the back steps of the healing center, eating lunch in the pale autumn sunshine, when she looked at me sideways and said, "You seem different." Different how? Like you got taller. She tilted her head. Not actually taller. But like the way you're sitting. You're not doing that thing anymore. What thing? The waiting thing. Like you always had one ear turned toward a door. I thought about that. No, I said slowly. I don't think I am. Lyra was quiet for a moment, pulling apart a piece of bread with careful fingers. She had been my closest friend since childhood, and she had watched the last 2 years with the particular helpless grief of someone who loves you and cannot make you see what they see. Emma, she said carefully. Did something happen with Damien? No, I said. That's sort of the point. She looked at me. I looked back at her. And then she did something that surprised me. She reached over and put her arms around me and held on tight. Good, she said fiercely, into my hair, good for you. I should have known the universe had a sense of humor about these things. 3 weeks after my quiet Tuesday revelation, the pack received news that the Northridge Alliance was being formally celebrated with a week-long gathering at Crestfall. Which meant Damien's intended, Serena Northridge, tall and severe and politically formidable, would be arriving with her family. which meant the pack would be alive with ceremony and politics and the kind of charged social theater that made my skin crawl. It also meant Damien would be unavoidable. I prepared for it the way I had learned to prepare for hard things, practically, without drama. I would attend the required events as a pack member. I would be civil. I would be unremarkable. I would not look at him with anything he could interpret as yearning, because I was done with yearning. I had retired it. I was 30 days into the rest of my life. What I did not prepare for was the way he looked at me when I walked into the great hall on the first night of the gathering. I had worn green, a simple dress, nothing calculated, just a color Lyra had handed me when I'd asked her to stop me from defaulting to invisibility gray again. My hair was down. I was standing straight. And I was genuinely, actually talking and laughing with Rowan, one of the pack's younger warriors, about something completely inconsequential. A disagreement about which trail was best for the morning run, when I felt it. A stare with weight to it. Old habit made me turn. New muzzle made me take a breath first. Damien was standing 20 feet away, glass in hand, mid-conversation with 3 of the Northridge men. But he wasn't looking at them. He was looking at me with an expression I had never seen on his face in 2 years of watching him. He looked uncertain. Damien Blackwood, who moved through the world like he had authored it. Uncertain. I held his gaze for exactly 3 seconds. Then I turned back to Rowan and continued the conversation. Behind me, I felt the distinct and novel sensation of Damien Blackwood watching me walk away. He sought me out before the end of the night. I had been expecting it, in the abstract way you expect weather, not the specific moment, just the general inevitability. He found me in the side corridor near the library, where I'd slipped away for 10 minutes of quiet. He was alone, which was unusual. He moved toward me and for a moment we just looked at each other, and the bond hummed between us like a plucked string, and I let it hum. I just didn't reach for it. "You look well," he said finally. "Thank you." A silence. He seemed to be waiting for something, for me to ask him how he was, perhaps. To step toward him. To do any of the dozen small things I would have done before, all of them tiny gestures of pursuit, of trying. I waited with him in the silence, and I did not feel it. Something moved across his face. Discomfort, maybe. Or the first tremor of something he didn't have a name for yet. "I've been thinking," he started. "Damien," my voice came out gentle but final, like a door being eased shut. "I hope you have a good evening." I walked past him. My shoulder came within 6 inches of his, and the bond screamed, and I breathed through it, and I kept walking. Behind me, I heard him say my name. Just once. The way he said it, with a roughness at the edges that I had never heard before, nearly stopped my feet. Nearly, I turned the corner and kept going. Whatever I had done in that corridor, it lit something in Damien Blackwood that 2 years of my love and devotion never had. The following morning, I was at the edge of the forest at dawn, going through the stretches that preceded a shift, when I heard footsteps and looked up to find him there. He was already in training clothes, hair disheveled from sleep, and he looked, without all the careful armor of the night before, painfully young. Painfully real. "You're here early," I said neutrally. "I followed your scent." He said it flatly, like he was confessing something and refusing to apologize for it. "Emma, what's happening?" "What do you mean?" "With you. Something's different." He took a step closer, and I held my ground without retreating and without leaning in. You're looking at me like what?" "Like you don't need anything from me." There was a rawness in how he said it that might have, once, sent me rushing to reassure him. "Of course I need you. Of course. You're everything. I recognize the impulse the way you recognize a road you no longer travel." "I don't," I said simply. Something cracked in his expression. "Since when?" "About a month ago." I said it kindly. "It was a Tuesday." He stared at me. "I don't understand." I know I meant to tighten my lace. You got very comfortable with me needing things from you that you weren't giving. I think somewhere, without meaning to, it became part of how you understood whatever this is. Our situation. I straightened. I've stopped. That's all. That's all, he repeated like the words were foreign. I'm going to run now. I nodded toward the tree line. You're welcome to do the same. Separately, I shifted before he could respond, bones and light and the clean break into 4 legs, and I ran into the trees and I ran hard. And the forest opened up around me like an embrace. And somewhere behind me I heard him shift too, and I ran faster and I felt free, so wildly. Completely free. He did not respect the separately. Over the following 3 days, Damien found me with a persistence that was entirely new. Not the old, lazy gravity of an alpha heir who knew the planet would orbit him, but something almost desperate. He appeared at the healing center. He materialized at meals, sliding into seats with implausible coincidence. He found reasons to speak with Lyra, which had never happened in his life, transparently hoping she would provide intelligence on my whereabouts. Lyra, to her credit, found this absolutely hilarious and reported it to me in full detail every time. He asked me if you were coming to the evening ceremony, she informed me, failing to hide her delight. He tried to be very casual about it. He was not casual about it. What did you tell him? I said I didn't know your schedule. She grinned. He looked like someone told him the sun had rescheduled. I tried not to find it gratifying. I succeeded about 40% of the time, but underneath the darkly satisfying novelty of it, I was also careful with myself. I knew what this was or what it could become. The mate bond was a force of nature, and now that I had stopped straining toward him, the balance of pull had shifted, and he was feeling for the first time what I had felt for 2 years. The drought at the absence. The awareness of exactly how far away the other person was in any given room. I had lived inside that feeling long enough to know it wasn't the same as love. It was the possibility of love. It was the raw material. What you built with it, or whether you built anything at all, was a choice that lived above the biology in the harder, more deliberate parts of yourself. I had made my choices. The question was whether Damien Blackwood was capable of making his. The answer came on the 4th night, at a formal packed dinner I could not avoid. I was seated 3 chairs from Serena Northridge, who was everything I was not, cool, patrician, immovable as marble, and across the table, Damien sat between his father and her father, playing the role of dutiful heir with a jaw so tight I could see it from 15 feet away. I ate my dinner. I spoke to the people around me. I did not look at him more than courtesy required. And then his father stood to make a toast. To the alliance. To the future of both packs. To Damien and Serena, whose union would be announced formally at the end of the week. The room raised its glasses. I raised mine. From across the table, I felt Damien's stare land on me like a physical weight, and I met it briefly, and I smiled. Not a performative smile, not a brave girl's smile, but a real and honest one, the kind that comes from having already survived the worst of something. It's okay, that smile said. I'm not waiting for you anymore. I've released you. Something in his face broke completely open. He excused himself before the toast finished. His father looked startled, then furious. Serena watched him go with the expression of a woman who had suspected this was coming and had already made contingency plans, which told me something significant about her. I stayed for the rest of the dinner. I had long practice at carrying difficult things without letting them show. He was waiting outside my cottage door. I had walked home slowly, taking the long way through the forest path, breathing the night air and listening to the owls and letting myself feel all the complicated things I had been holding at arm's length. And during dinner. Sadness, yes. The mate bond singing in my chest with an ache that was almost musical. but underneath it, unchanged, the quiet. He was sitting on my front steps, elbows on his knees, head bowed, and when I came up the path he looked up and the expression on his face was nothing I had ever seen from him. He looked stripped. Wholly frightening naked. Emma, he said. Damien, I stopped at the foot of the steps. You should go back to the dinner. I can't marry her. The silence stretched between us, full of crickets and distant laughter from the great hall and the sound of my own heart. That's not something you get to say to me, I said quietly. That's a conversation you need to have with your father. And with Serena. I know, he stood. I know that. I'm not asking you to solve that for me. He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. I need you to know. Before I do anything. I need you to know he stopped again, and I watched him wrestle with something enormous, something he had apparently been carrying in silence for 2 years while I had been busy carrying my own version of it. Say it plainly, I said. Or don't say it at all. He looked at me directly. I love you. 3 words. I had waited 2 years to hear them, had imagined 100 versions of this moment, had rehearsed my response in the way you rehearse for something you're not sure will ever happen. And now here they were, and they sounded true. Unguarded and true. The way things sound when they've finally been let out of a very long captivity. I felt them land. I felt the bond respond with something warm and urgent. I held both feelings and breathed around them and didn't move. I know you do, I said. Some part of me has probably always known then. That's not the question, Damien. I sat down on the bottom step, and after a moment, he sat beside me, and we both looked out at the dark forest. Whether you love me has never been the question. The question has always been whether you choose me. Those are not the same thing. He was quiet. I felt him understanding me, slowly, in the careful way of someone reassembling an argument they had told themselves for years and finding the flaws in it. I thought I was protecting you, he said finally, from my father, from the politics. If I claimed you publicly, you'd become a target, the alliance my father needs. If I refused it, there would be consequences that fell on more people than just me. I told myself it was sacrifice, I said. I know. I told myself the same story about you for 2 years, Damien. He's sacrificing. He's protecting me in ways I can't see. I looked at him. But here's what I learned. A protection that looks identical to abandonment, from the inside, is something you eventually can't survive. And I was destroying myself trying to. He closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. I had never seen Damien Blackwood cry. In 23 years of knowing him, I had never seen it. The sight of it did something to me, complicated and irreversible. I'm sorry, he said. I believe you, Emma. He turned to face me fully, and his voice was raw and stripped of all the composure that usually armored it. Tell me it's not too late. Please tell me it's not too late. I looked at him for a long time. At the man I had loved since I was old enough to understand what love meant. At the flawed and complicated person behind the alpha air, the one who had been cruel with his silence and cowardly with his choices and who was sitting on my front step in the dark asking me, for the first time in 2 years, for something that cost him something to ask. At the fact that I still felt him. Everywhere, in every nerve, in the way the bond hummed between us like a frequency my body had been tuned to since before I could choose otherwise. And at the quietness in my chest that I had spent the last month building. That hard one, precious quiet. I don't know, I said honestly. That's the truest answer I have. I don't know yet. He nodded slowly, like someone who had expected less and was learning to handle more. What do you need? I need you to talk to your father. Not for me, for yourself. Because you should stop doing things you don't choose to do and calling it duty. I held his gaze. And I need you to tell Serena. Honestly and directly, because she deserves that. And if I do those things, then we'll talk. I stood. But Damien, if you're doing them to win me back, we're already in trouble. Do them because they're true. Do them because you're finally choosing yourself as much as you choose me. That's the only version of this I can be part of. He looked up at me from the step, and something in his face had shifted into something new, something that looked, for the first time, like a person arriving at himself. I understand, he said. I went inside. I sat on my bed in the dark, and I breathed through the mate bond, and through the hope I hadn't meant to feel, and through the grief of all the time that had already been spent. I let myself feel all of it, without hiding from any of it. And then I slept. For the first time in 2 years, I slept without one ear turned toward a door. What happened next is a story for another telling. Damien had the conversation with his father, not quietly, not politically, but completely. The kind of conversation that breaks things before they can be rebuilt. There was fallout there. Was fury. There were 3 days of packed tension that made the air feel like the inside of a storm. Cloud, he spoke to Serena privately first. She took it with exactly the dignity of a woman who had seen this coming and had made contingency plans. I found out later she had her own situation waiting in the wings. A Northridge PAC member she had been choosing for years, in the private space behind her political obligations. She and I, eventually, would understand each other very well. Damien came to me on a Sunday afternoon, 7 days after the night on my front step. He knocked on my door with no ceremony and no grand speech prepared. He simply stood there in the ordinary autumn light and said, I talked to my father. And Serena. And myself, which was honestly the hardest one. I leaned against my doorframe and looked at him. I'm not asking you to love me the way you used to, he said. I don't want that back, Emma. He paused, gathering it. I want to start over. From something honest. I don't know what will be at the end of it. But I know what I choose. And I'm finally, for the first time, choosing it out loud. I thought about the Tuesday morning. The toothbrush. The girl in the mirror who had looked so tired. I thought about the month of quiet I had built, the sleep, the runs in the forest, the wholeness of becoming myself again. I thought about the fact that none of that would go away. That I would still be her. That Emma, the intact and quiet one, regardless of what I walked toward. That the condition of my going forward was not giving myself up again. That I had a self now worth protecting, and I intended to protect it. Coffee, I said. He blinked. What? Come in and have coffee. We'll talk. I pushed the door wider. That's where we start. With something ordinary. With something that doesn't have the weight of 2 years on it. A smile broke across his face, slow and uncertain and more genuine than anything I had seen from him in all this time. He looked like someone who had just been told, after very long exile, that they were allowed home. But home to a place he had to learn. A place with new rules he hadn't written. He stepped through the door. I made the coffee. And outside the window, the mountain forest went on doing what it had always done, breathing, growing, indifferent to the small human dramas of its people, rooted and enduring. Already moving toward spring. There is a particular kind of strength that doesn't announce itself. It's not the strength that fights or endures or holds on. It's the strength that finally, quietly, lets go, and in the letting go, discovers that it was never the holding that kept it whole. I am Emma Calloway, and I spent years learning that lesson. And I am still learning it, one ordinary morning at a time.